Welcome, everyone, and thank you so very much for joining me on another episode of Talking Cloud. Now, this is where we talk about cloud, all things cloud, anything cloud, and man, oh man, it is such an enormous word today. Anything that's got to do with computing, we are very likely going to be talking about cloud. Now, I've said it many, many times on this program, and I'll say it again. I am no expert, but I do know where to find them, and I'm really excited today. We got another great one. This guy's very seasoned, very experienced. Dustin, gosh, I noticed he started out, at least his profile starts out years ago as a senior technical instructor for a company I just spoke about on another event, Cadence. Cadence Design Systems, and he's since been through a myriad of technical roles. He spent a handful of years running professional services for Quest. He was director of IT at a little company you may have heard of, EMC. He was actually in the public service for a time, it looks like, helping Portland Public Schools as director of information technology, VP product operations, platform and strategy at NWEA. Man, oh man, vice president of DevOps and technical operations at Smarsh. Then he went on and spent a few years as CTO, Evotech Labs, and executive director of platform engineering, DevOps, and cloud. And in the last year, he's been, or just under a year, the Field CTO Cloud Services for InterVision Systems. And so this is going to be an awesome conversation, I can tell already, with as much stuff has been shifting left in terms of security and cloud and this pandemic and the acceleration to the cloud and digital transformation. I'm really super excited to introduce, ladies and gentlemen, I've got Dustin Milberg, again, Field CTO Cloud Services for InterVision Systems. Dustin, welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, it's awesome that you made time for us. Thank you. Just reading through the very impressive background, why don't you give some Z-axes for the audience? Tell them a little bit about yourself and where your specialties lie.
Yeah, so, you kind of hit on the career outline there, off the page, where I really started to get particularly interested in this concept of software engineering, software development was the time I spent at Quest Software. And, Quest has gone through a number of iterations. They were a standalone company. They got acquired by Dell, and now they're a standalone company again. But really, my time at that organization really helped me get curious about and understand more about what goes into developing and delivering software, what goes into optimizing data, and what goes into optimizing performance, and it was kind of back in the day when application performance monitoring was a little bit of a knife fight. There was, everybody and their brother had some sort of monitor that they could put on things. But, the transformation that's taken place now around not just performance, but really analytics. How is it performing and what do I do with the information I've got? And a lot of these huge leaps and steps forward have happened as a result of the advent of public cloud providers and the products and services that they bring to market. And so, my tenure at Northwest Evaluation Association really helped me get deeper and deeper into leveraging the cloud for a really strategic level and delivering products and services out to, I can't think, short of saving lives, I can't think of anything more altruistic and important than educating kids today. So we spent a lot of time doing that and really harness the power of the cloud in order to bring those services to bear.
That's terrific. So as a field CTO, elaborate a little bit on that for me. Is that out customer facing, engaging with clients and executives?
Yeah. So given that I've walked in the shoes of the customers that are ultimately trying to solve many of the problems that InterVision helps focus on, bringing solutions to light. I'm kind of in a unique position to be able to speak the same language. I understand some of the same problems that they're going through, and how to solve some of those things, or at least how I have solved them in the past. And so bringing some of that insight into a conversation that is familiar to our customers really helps. And so I work alongside our sales organization to bring that technical overlay into the conversation, kind of be the tip of the spear to start that conversation, to help our customers really get down the avenue of beginning or furthering their cloud journey.
Right. Well, and I suspect, come on, let's call a spade a spade. There's some credibility that is lent there with you on a 4-legged sales call, 6-legged sales call with a sales engineer, a salesperson, and yourself. I could certainly see, because of your background, because you did, as you put, walked in those shoes, that would be a real credibility builder for you and the rest of your organization when you're on a call.
I'd like to think so. I for sure, I know, at least in the last 3.5 years, 4 years that I've been on the consulting side of this conversation, I get more head nodding now than I ever have in my career. And that means that, we're using the right decoder to get at these problems. And kind of the one thing that I think it lends itself, the highest value proposition is that, understanding the cloud and the technologies that surround it, right? We can learn those things pretty easily, but getting the people and process elements lined up behind it, that's the real work that any technology leader has to do. And, I've helped a couple organizations get over that hump, and it's been very rewarding in my career.
Boy, I suspect, and I imagine, Dustin, this past year, give or take a few months, has really just accelerated so much of the effort and activity. In fact, I think probably it's fair to say there's a fair number of clients that ready, fire, aim in terms of supporting mobile workers, remote workers, right, and how they went about securing them. And that certainly very likely also included the cloud, right?
Oh, for sure. I wrote an article about 4 or 5 months back, and the question that I was asked to answer, and it was, well, how has COVID really affected cloud adoption? And, when the pandemic began, everybody was just kind of on pins and needles. Am I allowed to go into a building? Can I, if so, for how long? How close can I stand to somebody, and for how long? And matter of fact, there were a lot of people that were just saying, I'm out. I'm not going into the data center. Well, how are we going to provision workloads? Let's just leverage the cloud. Somebody else is already maintaining that. We can consume. And that's really what the cloud is about, is a consumption model. It's taking what was a traditional purchasing problem, and then you have capacity under which you are constrained to work, and it's transformed that now into a model where organizations just consume, and they consume what they need when they need it, and when they don't need it, they can turn it off. So for many organizations, it's brought a lot of peace of mind, right? We know when we turn on the spigot, water will flow. We don't ask when it will stop. It'll stop if we don't pay our bill. But other than that, we expect water to flow or electricity to flow out of the sockets. And in some way, the cloud has taken what was a problem of purchasing and capital investment and turned it into a commodity-based service, almost utility. And that is, I can imagine, especially for leaders in organizations that are bringing technical products and solutions to bear and do marketing through the internet and reach their customers through web browsers and phone applications. The cloud is a big relief, meaning they know when they turn on that faucet, the water will flow. And so a lot of time has been spent with helping organizations understand how to begin that journey, how to transform that journey, and how to optimize their use and consumption and secure their use and consumption in the cloud.
Yeah, and I notice I'm hearing journey, and I was actually reading through, I think, an article that you posted a short time ago talking about the journey to the cloud is more important than the arrival. You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I get asked the question a lot, and it's of all the articles I've written, that's kind of the one that tends to resurface in conversations most prominently. And I kind of liken it, and if you've listened to any other podcasts I've done or conversations I've had, I liken it a lot to fitness, right? There's a journey to fitness, and when you're unfit and you want to get fit, right? What do? You eat better and you exercise more, and then you get fit. But you don't. When you get fit, you don't stop exercising and stop eating well, right? Otherwise, you end up right back in that unfit place, and so it's not about just getting to the cloud. It's about continuing to evolve and adopt those best practices and taking advantage of the optimal things that the cloud allows you to consume that mean good hygiene and fitness for you and your organization. So if you start out with a good plan that is predicated on where are we today, where do we want to be, and how are we going to measure success, and then where are we at gap, that's really the foundational element to a successful cloud adoption. And then that journey begins. And I'm not sure it's ever really done, right? Because even once you've got your products and services up in the cloud, there's going to be a new offering or a new innovation that comes along, or you're going to want to change what you do as an organization in response to the way your customers leverage what you bring to the market. And so you have to be continually learning and continually evolving your consumption. And that's really what I meant by it when I wrote the article.
Right. One of the things that I've heard before, sometimes when you go into the cloud, you're best off taking that Etch-a-Sketch and turning it upside down and just shaking it for a couple of minutes and just totally forgetting, wiping the slate clean. And some even advocate unlearning the way you always did it and really, truly relearning cloud native, because it will ultimately accelerate your journey down the road. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll start with, for our listeners that are under the age of 43 years old, an Etch-a-Sketch is a toy that most of us played with when we grew up.
Thanks, Dustin. I guess I probably should have some visual cues, right?
And those of us who start with a 50, we can even go into deeper conversation about toys we played with and what they mean to the cloud journey. But I would say, everybody's journey is different and what they're trying to accomplish is different. So kind of, let's go back to our fitness analogy, right? Some people get fit because, it's doctor's orders. Others get fit because it makes them feel good. Others get fit because they're professional athletes and they have to perform in such a way, right? So they're all going to have different fitness regimens. And the same is true relative to the cloud adoption. I think that, the way organizations consume the cloud should be based on what they're trying to accomplish and what their business needs are. Some organizations are more foundational, traditional infrastructure and operations types of activities. And so maybe a lift and shift is going to be okay for them because their workloads aren't variable. However, a customer that that sells things on the internet as an e-commerce company, or maybe they've got, I'll go back to my model of Northwest Evaluation Association. We were, delivering online formative assessments and interim assessments to K through 12 kids, which meant that, it's benchmarking, and the kids took the test 3 times a year. So we had a 3-hump camel that we could pretty much predict with really high fidelity when our testing cycles were going to be high. Mm-hmm. So we had to build for, a scale that was extremely high. But if we were purchasing equipment to satisfy all that need, right, you'd know that the opposite problem would exist, which meant we had a whole bunch of unused capacity sitting idle the majority of the time, right? So to consume services and products in the cloud based on an ephemeral model like that means you do pretty much have to re-platform, re-architect, and refactor for the use of cloud. And for some organizations, it is going to be really healthy to forget what you know, unlearn what you've learned, and you gotta really transform to this new model. Mm-hmm. But I would say that for most organizations, it's probably an iterative journey, and it's going to be one of those things that over time they will evolve into that model that means, gosh, remember back when we used to do it that way,
right?
But we don't do it that way more.
Right. So I'll throw one out there. I'd love to hear your analysis, thoughts, opinions on, okay? And this is one I heard, and it's all, I think, predicated and based on this elastic, almost seemingly alive, living, breathing thing we call the cloud. And it's having a philosophy or a viewpoint of your environment of farm animals as opposed to pets. Right? The old data center was pets, that we had servers and we took care of them, we patched them and we fed them and we nurtured them and we kept them going. And farm animals, we grow and then we kill and we grow new ones. And I heard this analogy about the cloud because things are becoming so elastic, so ephemeral, so fast, so functions driven, that we can really start to just build and tear down and rebuild in an iterative process as opposed to trying to nurture and maintain. I'd be curious what you think of that.
It's an interesting analogy. I've never heard that one before. I think that the thing about it is everything's a risk profile for organizational leadership, right? What are we trying to accomplish? What are we accomplishing today? And then how do we close that gap? And that could be everything from financial goals to security-based goals to mitigating risk to whatever. And how they measure that can be everything from shareholder equity to top line revenue to bottom line revenue, any of those things. But whatever you choose as your factor, the reality is that the cloud offers you ways to address pretty much all those business needs, right? They provide you insights into how much you're consuming. They even allow you to tag instances to see what things cost at a macro or at a micro level as well as a macro level. Mm-hmm. And you can tie that back to what your organizational revenue is in those different areas. And so, and we all know that immutable deployments are far less risky than ongoing patching and non-immutable deployments. So I think that in that sense, the ability to build and destroy at will certainly closes the gap on a risk perspective. Certainly more so for organizations that are a little bit further down this maturity curve that have transformed from monolithic in applications to one that's at least loosely coupled service-based, if not microservice-based. And those organizations truly get to harness that full power that the cloud provides.
Yeah, totally agree. In fact, that's kind of why I was throwing it out as a, where the world could be when you start to consider an environment that's driven largely by code and functions. The potential of having that environment is far greater than, maybe if you're much earlier in the journey, as you say. So I think you're spot on that. So what advice, I guess, would you throw out? I mean, we've talked about some different things, but just from a risk assessment, do you advocate, for example, multi-cloud? Do you tell them it's okay to be just in one cloud? Does that even matter? Where's the marketplace with regard to that discussion?
Well, I would say it goes back to what are your goals and objectives as an organization. So part of it just depends on what you're trying to do, right? If you're in a highly regulated industry where there are mandates that your computing instances must live within a geographical boundary, that might make some decisions for you as to where your workloads live and how they live. Right. Some organizations have highly stringent security controls, and their appetite for risk or even perceived risk is very, very low. So they may want to keep a portion of their workloads on premise. Others like that, the capital outlay model as opposed to the more OpEx outlay model. And so they will take a hybrid approach, but it's really based on goals and objectives. The one thing that they also have to consider is the skills and abilities of the people in their organization. And so, you always want to think about how do I keep technical debt down, and You can consume multiple clouds and on-premise, and you can do it with one code base if you really work hard at it. But that can also create additional risks. So I think it's about risk and reward profiling and making sure that organizations think about the injection of complexity and the risk that poses. One of my little memes is that there's elegance in simplicity, and I encourage technical leaders and consumers to think about things relative to sometimes the simplest solution is the best.
Right. I'm proud to say I cut my teeth early helping open an Apple dealership and subsequently went to work for Apple back in the 80s. And one of the things I still remember, one of their marketing mantras was that a tool in and of itself has no inherent value, and the true value of any tool is its ease of learning and ease of use. And I've remembered that still to this day because I felt it was so spot on. And I think sometimes in this day and age where the complexity is so unbelievable, sometimes the best way is to do it in the simplest and easiest way. And I completely agree. So I'm curious, what do you hear from the marketplace, Dustin? What are you hearing as you're out having your executive conversations about the cloud, the satisfaction, the challenges? What are the topics you're having out there, conversations, if you can share?
I think that things that are top of mind for everybody are certainly security and risk mitigation. So I talk a lot about how organizations can shift left, embed security by design. How do you architect for security? And a lot of organizations will say, oh, well, we've got DevSecOps or we've got DevOps, right? And one of the things I encourage organizations to really think about is those terms as adjectives, not as verbs or nouns. Instead, it's really focused more on the fact that if security and success is everybody's shared responsibility, so we're all responsible for it, we're all accountable for it, then you've got to insist on instilling the right behaviors and have the right supports and processes, and then align the right tooling to that in order to bring that to fruition.
Right.
And it starts with good design, and it starts with good practice. And so I spend a lot of time working with organizations and having that conversation. The other area, obviously, that's top of mind is cost, especially right now with, in the time of uncertainty that COVID has brought and the pandemic has brought on businesses, making sure that organizations can keep costs under control, have transparency around it, and get get their costs aligned with what their goals and objectives are. Then, we at InterVision, we have products and services aimed directly at helping customers solve that. Remember, we've got a product we launched just earlier this year called Cloud Cost Optimization, where we're guaranteeing our customers a minimum of 30% savings on their monthly cloud spend.
Wow.
So that's very much top of mind for our customers. And I think the third one, and I did a podcast internally with Jeff Tunn at InterVision. It's a three-part series about cloud first means people first, and then process, and then tools. And when we talked a lot about that, getting organizations to move without really focusing heavily on the people element of this is a big mistake that a lot of organizations make. So I spent a lot of time kind of coaching and advising technical leaders on, think about the people element of this and the role it plays in your success or failure, because it's ultimately going to be the thing that makes the biggest difference.
There's no question. The human element is the most significant one. And personally, I'm a big believer, while I share the sentiments that we need to inform and educate and teach our users as much as we can, I'm kind of a cynic because I kind of liken it more to the auto industry, Dustin. I bought a brand new vehicle for my wife just a few months ago, and it didn't come with any training. It didn't come with any defensive driving courses, nothing. But it does have adaptive cruise control. It brakes for me in emergencies. It parks for me. It alerts me and will brake if I don't notice something behind me. It protects me from me. And I really believe that will be a prevailing trend in technology, checking code before it's checked in. And you click commit. Behind the scenes, it's actually getting scanned and tested before it goes. As much as I think it's an admirable notion that we're going to educate our users to stop being risky and not make mistakes, I really think it's going to be technology that will help us. What do you think?
Well, first of all, people are human, right? And by our very nature, we will make mistakes. As a matter of fact, we learn much more from our mistakes than we do from our successes. And I think if anything, some of those mistakes have taught us, especially in an agile world where we're not, we could be doing 50, 60, 100, 200, 500 releases a day, right? Gone are the days where, well, at least for mature organizations that, where they do monthly releases or quarterly releases, those things are highly risky. They put your organization in a place where if you have to revert, the risk could be even greater. You risk data loss. You can massively impact customer perception of quality. So most organizations have gone to agile, more smaller, frequent releases, and so to have somebody sitting there manually going through those security tests, so whether it be static code analysis, dynamic code analysis, code coverage, code quality elements that they need to be thinking about, you just can't do that manually. The capacity simply isn't there to keep up. And so, as part of that whole approach to adopting a healthy CI/CD pipeline and tool chain, organizations that are shifting left have absolutely embedded those elements of security into the way that they behave.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's going to be a trend. I think you'll see more of it.
A lot of the products and services that we help customers adopt and embed at InterVision are directly tied to that very specific part of software development maturity. And it's eye-opening, especially to legacy or traditional, and I'm going to put air quotes around IT organizations, because it could be anything from engineering to IT to both, that they, when they hear about this, they're like, oh, wow, why is this the first I'm hearing of this, right?
Right. There's no question automation is absolutely an essential key component when you want to really move at the speed of cloud, whether it's on the DevOps side or really, in general, you've got to find ways to automate. I think that's really important. And the great thing is that you can in so many ways in the cloud, right?
Absolutely. Whether you consume cloud native services around building out CI/CD pipeline inside of, what they have to provide you to do that, or you harness the power of kind of best of breed individual point solutions, or you go out for holistic package solutions along this. The one that's the best, though, is the one that meets the needs of the organization with measurement in place. And that's another conversation that I have with leaders all the time is you got to keep score. Don't keep score of too many things. Keep score of a limited number of factors that are meaningfully help you move the needle in the direction that the business needs to go, and publish those results. And when they don't make sense anymore, get rid of them, but have a way to keep score relative to your organization's adoption of that tool chain and pipeline, and make it transparent and course correct when you need to.
And that will also contribute to the alignment that we were talking about earlier, right? The people part. And by sharing and communicating that information with the people, it seems like it would certainly contribute to just more effective alignment. Everybody's rowing in the same direction.
100% agree with that. And that is that is absolutely a leading indicator, but the lagging indicator of that, and which is going to feed back into that excellence mantra, is that you're going to have more highly satisfied employees who aren't going to be looking for new jobs. Yep. Because you're an organization that innovates. They feel like they're working on things that are innovative, and that they are working on cool new technology, and they're not stuck in a pit of feeling like the work that they do never sees the light of day, or if it does, it's hard to measure. And right. So I can't underestimate. It kind of goes right back to the whole people element thing, right? We don't do these things because we're trying to displace people. And I know there's a lot of fear for many people when they hear the term automation, my job is going away. And to the contrary, right? It means you get to build those things in to what you do. And it creates an opportunity for employees to grow and expand their value within the organization.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, one of the things, too, that I'll just throw out there that I really have always advocated, and clearly InterVision is one of the types of organizations that I've long advocated. Look at this whole space is going so bloody fast. And most of corporate America, Dustin, they got this long trail, right, that they're dragging along with them, this long IT trail, and subsequently trying to get up into the cloud. It's hard because there are so many little nuances and subtleties. And so I'm always a big advocate to seeking out experts, guys like you, organizations like InterVision, to really get help, because at the end of the day, I read a good one. If you think you can't afford to pay an expert, how do you think you can afford to get yourself out of the mess you're going to get into without the expert?
And what really resonates with me about that conversation, Grant, is that I think that organizations that are mature and are measurably improving, and they can do it through both leading and lagging indicators of success, are the ones that focus on their core competencies. So I'll give you kind of an example, right? If you're a financial services organization, everybody you hire in the organization should be focused on that as a core competency. How do we provide our customers with better products and services to improve their financial standing, right? If you're in the healthcare industry, it's how are we providing patients with the best care possible? And so I think about, in a world where infrastructure and many of the subsequent supports have become, truly utilitarian in nature, that you don't need to have IT operations and infrastructure management become one of your core competencies as a customer or as a company, right? Instead, take those positions that you would normally, focus in that area and up-level them and let them focus on that which is the core competency, transform them into software engineers that help build out the products and services you're trying to build to market. Our core competency at InterVision is being excellent at cloud adoption, cloud migration, cloud management, managed services in the cloud. That's our core competency. That's what we do. That's what we're in business to do. Right. So companies that work with InterVision not only get the benefit of the core competency that we do day in and day out, they also get the benefit of us observing and seeing where or other organizations have done really well and the pitfalls to avoid. So I think that your statement is directly in line with that, and that I think it makes a difference for customers as they look for the right partner with whom to hitch their wagon.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we did a survey towards the end of last year and found a real reprioritization, and I kind of hinted on this earlier, around mobile and remote security technologies, right? Mobile and endpoint technologies, and then bolstering public cloud and multi-cloud environments. And two additional kind of crept in, one being threat hunting, because this whole solar winds breach really rocked our world and made us go, holy moly, we need the ability to go and seek in our environment if there's anything hanging around. And the other that we saw was that turning around and looking at ourselves, meaning the company and our own software life cycle and our own supply chain, if you will. And it seems like those are big trends. And so I guess my question is, are those things that you're seeing as well, that organizations are pivoting because so much has shifted to this remote world and everybody's, go home, work from home?
There are going to be some industries and people that are going to be really eager to get back into the workplace, right? There's some, like, life is full of extroverts and introverts, and some people do better working around other people. Others do better working individually. And so, I think we're going to see a mix. I certainly, if this pandemic has taught us anything, it is that organizations can work in a distributed model. And I think there are going to be organizations that find value, both financial and even from a productivity standpoint in their employees, and allowing them to continue to have that option. There are other drivers too, right? I mean, at some point in time, if you don't keep up with the Joneses, you're going to find yourself out of business. One of my crack habits, Grant, is that I restore classic cars, and I had a one of the projects I was working on. Everything. It's a 1967 Ford Mustang, and there's not an electronic circuit in the entire car, so the speedometer cable went out on it, and I couldn't find one. And anyway, there's this guy here in Portland, Oregon, who owns a speedometer cable manufacturing company, and that's all he does. And I went in there, and he's got this 35,000 square foot warehouse, and he's got 12 lifts that he rents out for people to come in and do work on their cars, and then he just makes speedometer cables. And I asked him, how many others of you are there? And he said, well, when I started doing this business 62 years ago here in Portland, there were 12 of us. And he said, I'm the last one left.
Wow.
Right. So organizations can either roll the dice and hope to be the last speedometer cable manufacturer in their industry, right? Or they can evolve and say, we're going to have to figure out how to transform and change the way we work within the technical landscape to continue to drive excellence into the market.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I couldn't agree with you more. Well, this maybe is a perfect segue to thanking you, because now I want to talk to you about my son's 97 Mustang that he's hoping will be a classic, but we can talk about that at a later date.
Sure, 30 more years.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's nothing close to yours. But anyway, hey, this has been really enjoyable. I really enjoyed talking with you, and I want to thank you for joining us and sharing your expertise and wisdom. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, I enjoyed the conversation, Grant. Thanks so much.
Yep. So, ladies and gentlemen, we just had a great conversation with Dustin Milberg. He's the Field CTO for the Cloud Services over at InterVision Systems, and it was a great one. Again, Dustin, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much for joining us. We'll look forward to hearing you again on the next episode of Talking Cloud.